So be enough said.
So pause.
So
it's a worthwhile, even though it's all online, it's okay. You know,
right. You know, if you do it at home, if they're not going to do it here at the same time, you know, because sometimes, since I can't chant a single tune ever, you know, anywhere, it's really nice to hear it done when it's led by someone who can chant. And I don't know whether, you know, like Wendy Cook often is the chant master at Kurakula. You know, she's got a great voice and she knows all the tunes. She's been around for 40 years. You know, I mean, it's, you know, it's great. There are people up at Shanti Deva that sometimes lead it. So it's nice to look for it. And I told Don, I'm not Don, Dan, Don,
Anthony or
Dan?
Dan Tishner, Don Tishner, Don.
Don.
He's our SBC. Yeah, don't laugh too hard. That it really would be good if they noticed if anybody on the East Coast is doing it online so that people could participate in it. So yeah, I recommend it. Most centers will not do it when there's a class scheduled because they never get through their classes if that happens. Because what happens is you know, well, it's long. You can't, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but you also, because it's every 2 weeks, it often will be on the same day of the week. So then you end up missing 2 classes a month and that makes it hard.
Right.
So, which is no excuse, but you know, that's what we do. Monasteries, I promise you, they don't skip it. So, but then that's their job. So I think it's very worthwhile doing. You can also, some people, sometimes when you take a Hayashoga Tantra initiation, it's the commitment. You have to do it every day. You don't do sog offering every day, but you do the whole Guru Yoga. So it's on our calendar for Kurukula, is posting it online. So it's a good opportunity to participate. So, okay. So let's just take a moment to get ourselves here, get our mind here with our bodies, you know, and take a moment to try to generate a positive motivation and an expansive motivation for your time. You know, try to really generate that heartfelt wish that doing this will benefit your own mind and that it will benefit those around you, that it will help you on the path to enlightenment. And then you'll be truly of benefit to all sentient beings. I'll recite the 7-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. What's particularly nice in the Rapuja is there's a long section called of Lam Rim prayers, and it goes through the whole path. And I think it's a nicely, it's it's a very nice thing to read and contemplate. So. So I was looking today at these transcripts. Years ago, in 2008, I was fortunate enough to go to 6-day teaching on the Lam Rim in Lehigh, Pennsylvania. His Holiness was invited by the center that's in New Jersey somewhere. I've forgotten the Tibetan. I think a Mongolian geshe started it. I mean, it may have been the first one in this country. Anyway, a team of people, students there, dedicated many years to translating the Lam Rim Chenmo into English. And so in 2008, it was, I think all 3 volumes were being published or finally being published or whatever. And I had just studied it in Australia. We even got one of the texts just electronically because they hadn't published it yet. So we were very fortunate to have it. So His Holiness gave this teachings for 6 days. And it's the longest teaching he's ever given to Westerners on a text. So, but it's on the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive, the transcript. So I'd forgotten that that's where it is. I have them all on my computer, so I just forgotten that that's where they are. They're wonderful teachings. And so it goes over, bits of the whole path because that's what he covers. I have been so fortunate, to receive these teachings like from His Holiness, and I was on the stage, with the other monks, and it's like, wow, it's amazing. But Jeffrey Hopkins was there because he was one of the translators, and Thubten Jempa was translated these teachings, and he's a long-term translator of His Holiness, who was a monk and got his geshe degree, but really always wanted to have a family. So he gave back his robes and got a PhD in religious studies. He started a compassion center at Stanford. He lives in Canada. But so he's an excellent translator. So all of that's good. So I can highly recommend that to read. And one of the things I was reading, it says, one of the most important things we need to recognize, on the path, I mean, especially just even to develop the desire to be liberated, is the truth of suffering. And there are 3 types of suffering, right? So what are the 3 types of suffering? She looks at Jack because Jack should know.
Well, suffering of suffering.
Which is what?
Pain.
Ordinary mental and physical suffering, yep.
Ordinary.
And that even animals recognize,
Change.
Which is what?
Usually pleasure.
It is by definition sort of it's what we call pleasure, but it's getting at what?
That everything changes and we don't like it.
Well, everything even pleasurable ends. It's gonna change, so because there's no everlasting pleasure in samsara. And then finally,
all pervasive.
Yeah, and another way it's translated, which might be helpful in understanding its meaning, is the all-pervasive suffering of conditioning. That we have a conditioned existence. Our bodies, everything we experience is conditioned by karma and afflictions, from our causes, the things that we've created the cause for. And they often talk about these conditioned aggregates. So what are the aggregates?
Parts.
What are our aggregates? When they talk about aggregates in Buddhism, what are they talking about?
Mind and body. Mind has several parts and the body.
And the body has several parts. But there are 5 aggregates I talk about. One of them is the body, the aggregate of form. What are the other 4? They're all states of mind. There's either consciousness, that's one of them, all the other states of mind, feeling, and intention.
Feeling is the
Yeah. Anyway, and they're highlighted because they're really important in terms of getting us bound to cyclic existence. It's our experience of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. It's our ignorance, that takes the feelings, and makes them into something big. So we try to avoid what's unpleasant. We try to, have more of what's pleasant, blah, blah, blah. And it's this, the aggregates, other than like consciousness, which we just have, but all the flavors of our consciousness, all the different states of mind that arise, our reflection, they arise from our ignorance about how we exist. All our negative ones, they are contaminated by, our good ones are contaminated by ignorance. Our negative states of mind actually arise because of our misunderstanding about how we exist. And it's true of everything in samsara. So our aggregates, all of this is conditioned from our karma and afflictions. So this is one of the reasons you can say we can't fix samsara. It's not fixable. It's the result of our karma and afflictions. It's the ripening of our karma. So as he says, Lama Tsongkhapa says, our existence is bound within the karmically conditioned aggregates that are in a sense like the vessels, the container, within which the fruits of our past karma and afflictions are ripened. And it also serves as a further condition that enhances the causes and conditions that would give rise to future suffering. So the aggregates serve both as a container of suffering, present suffering, and also they serve as a condition for future suffering as well. So renunciation arises out of this wanting to definitely emerge from this state of affairs. We don't want to continue to be stuck in a karmically conditioned system. Right. And understanding this all pervasive, or at least getting a sense that it's all pervasive, the suffering of conditioning, helps us understand that existence in samsara is the nature of suffering. And what the Buddha said, there's good news about this, is that if we understand this, and then we stop doing the things that continue to create negative karma to stay stuck in samsara, we can have cessation of suffering. So, first, when you meet the teachings, you learn that you can have better rebirths than what you have by, paying attention to what you do, say, think, that your actions are covered by ethics, that you don't commit any negative actions. But then if you want more than just a better rebirth than this one, you want to get out of it altogether. And then if you care about, and what happens is even when you're liberated, you realize, oh, you can do this. It's possible. It's possible to be liberated. You want to help everybody else. And you realize you have to become omniscient. You have to understand everything all the time, all at once, in order to be able to help each being that's still stuck in some sorrow. So it's important to understand this in order to be liberated. So you don't even have, you don't even have to be aiming for Buddhahood. You have to understand how things exist. It's a realization of emptiness that allows you to be liberated from samsara. So that's both a middle scope being as well as the greater scope being. It's really about goals. So even if your goal is liberation or your goal is enlightenment, you have to realize emptiness. So His Holiness goes on to say the second important fact that one needs to recognize is that in itself, the essential nature of the mind is not polluted. This is the primordial mind that has always existed, always will exist. So this is a hard thing to understand. We talk a lot about the pollution of the mind, and that the good news is that the pollution can be removed, right? And this is what it's getting at. It isn't that we have to change the mind itself. We have to remove the pollution. It is the pollution that is obscuring the purity of the mind. And that's why we call it true cessations. It's not like we transform anger into something else. We have a cessation of anger. It doesn't arise again. We have a cessation of all the negative states of mind.
Are we kind of replacing negative habits with positive habits?
We're also abandoning negative habits. So we're not necessarily, we're not replacing the good habits we have. We're cultivating those. We are abandoning the bad habits we have. And it's called a cessation. So it's not, and this is my point here is just this idea that it isn't that the mind is somehow altered by our negative states of mind. It's that we can't access the purity of the mind because of our negative states of mind. And ignorance is considered the great obscurer. We can't even see how things actually exist because of our misapprehension of how things exist.
Are the antidotes like replacing anger with patience?
That's how we suppress our habits, right? We cultivate the antidotes to them. The way that they cease is a realization of emptiness. Once we get rid of our ignorance, there's no foundation for any of them to arise. They simply cease to exist and they never return. All of them.
All the negative states.
All the negative states of mind. They're all arising out of a misunderstanding of how things exist. And that misunderstanding comes from the way things appear to exist to us. It's sort of like, since we're born with stereoscopic vision and we're clearly, appear to be separate beings, all that kind of stuff, we have the sense of being the center of the universe. And we have a very clear sense of self and other. And then we take in our families as being part of that collection of mind, Yeah.
I was going to say in the United States, it teaches pretty much the opposite of what
seen clearly is. And I come across the problem of not fitting in with the culture, let's say.
And that's what Dharma practitioners usually do. They don't
Yes.
fit.
Don't fit in, and then there's like this emptiness that comes when you don't fit in.
There's a loneliness.
Yeah, it's like what I guess is that like a transition period, or is that like
It's
never go away?
Well, the good news is when you have a realization of emptiness, you realize you're not separate at all. You're not alone at all. You're not, none of that. And then, so as you progress, because when you're, blah, 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 blah. I really do talk sometimes, pronounce. When you progress along the path, which is another way of saying, as your mind is developed more and more towards enlightenment, paths are minds. They're not something different than that. So what we're trying to do is work with our minds in order to cease the negative states, in order to perfect the positive states, in order to realize that things don't exist the way they appear to us, which is the foundation. That realization of emptiness, the foundation for all our negative states to cease. Okay, I was going somewhere with that. So our sense of aloneness and separateness and all that stuff is from the appearance of things. When we drop that, when we no longer fall for the mistaken appearance of how things exist, we won't feel that way, which is really hard to imagine the way we are now, because ignorance is completely obscuring our ability to understand that, So as we start to really investigate the teachings and really investigate how we exist, the self that we grasp onto doesn't exist at all. We exist, but the self, the I that we grasp, is a totally distorted picture. And that's just what's so hard to let go of. But it makes us miserable.
Well, yeah, that comes back to the thing I asked about, I think last week, about what makes Buddhas different once they become Buddhas, and it's their histories. You could say that's the only, because otherwise all their attributes are the same. There's no ignorance. They perfected all their good qualities. They pervade all things. But at that point, the past, the future doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. Time's a construct.
Yeah.
And somehow I don't think it's relevant for Buddhas.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how what you call I am, what people call I am, what do you mean?
It's a mere I. In other words, when it's only in conventional existence that we need that at all. Obviously, if your mind's pervading every other mind, you don't have to talk. You also don't even have to think. This conceptual stuff, you're just aware. The clear and knowing aspect of mind just knows. It's experiencing everything all at the same time, all at once. And they say it's a state of bliss. So this is because what do you not get rid of?
The past.
Yeah, we can't change our past. That's true. You don't get rid of your good qualities.
And what?
Your good qualities.
Oh.
So all those states of mind that bring you happiness or joy, those are perfected. They don't cease. So all the things that create everything we enjoy in samsara, all the beauty, all the different ways that, like music, all the things that are created that we go, wow, it's our positive actions that
allow us or have, or the condition for a seed to ripen as enjoyment. It's not the thing that causes that. It's not in the sunset or in the work of art. It's in our ability to experience beauty. And that is a result of perfect, body, speech, and mind, at the level of a Buddha, So that's why it's bliss. There's just, and we can't even imagine the kind of bliss, because all of our enjoyment is tainted with grasping, attachment, aversion, all this garbage, all the worry, the knowing that it's going to end. Whereas a Buddhist bliss does not end, because they're experiencing existence as it actually is, not based on ignorance. So that what we keep doing is we keep grasping at phenomena as being the thing. That person makes me happy. That color is my favorite. The reason why we have, aversion or attraction is due to the ripening of past actions. So when you cease to have any negative actions at all you experience are positive results. So we can't imagine what that means for someone who, has Buddha mind or even a liberated mind. But you can try to get a taste of it just by reflecting on what it would be like to never have the slightest bit of irritation.
So why wouldn't the Buddha be frustrated with me for being lazy?
Because he has compassion for you.
Lazy.
He was once lazy. It's not his job to fix you. It's your job to fix you. He's not worried. He knows you have everything you need to become a Buddha, and he'll help whenever you create the cause. It's a two-way street. Frustration comes from not seeing things as they are. It's like, oh, you couldn't, it's your laziness that's in the way. Yeah, it's in the way. It's obscuring you from your true nature. But the only person who can fix it is you. So why would a Buddha worry? It's the classic Shantideva. Can't fix it? Why worry? Anger certainly won't fix it. We are so enamored of our negative states of mind as if they are fixers. Fixers. I can fix this person. I can fix this situation. And sometimes we need anger to do it, or we need to be impatient. Let them, hey, get a clue. You're delaying me from something important like my life, whatever it is. We really have this idea that somehow our negative states of mind are serving us well. And they don't. They fail. We just don't necessarily notice that part.
So is this where having a good motivation comes in? Specifically, because I know there's talk about having a very strong motivation to become enlightened, to follow the path. But does it also apply to things like getting over laziness instead of falling into a negative reaction like anger or something?
Well, that's part of how you make yourself enlightened to become.
Yeah.
That's why enthusiasm, delighting in virtue, joyous effort are part of the path.
So you're changing the motivation from anger to a more positive.
You're looking at anger and going, that just makes me suffer.
Yeah.
So that's not the way. So developing my ability to want to help others, to be compassionate, to be patient, to be generous, to have more wisdom, to learn more than, blah, 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 to always be ready to help. That's the way. So it's not a matter of saying, it's about understanding. It's about reflecting long and hard and again and again and again to see cause and effect in action, to recognize that anger doesn't get you what you want at all. It may get somebody to react to you and change what they're doing in that moment, but you've just caused harm to that person. So you're going to have that ripen in the future towards you.
But I know there's people, myself included, who in the past have been like, "Why did you do that? Like, you dumb me, whatever."
Well, yeah.
And
Yeah, you're not a
is-
Buddha. That's why you did it.
But that's like a motivation. That is like an unhealthy motivation for me in the past, at least.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
why yes, I agree. I think that when we are angry at ourselves for not doing it right or doing something wrong, that is an obstacle. Yep.
Just to let you know, since I'm quite a bit older than you, that doesn't go away. Okay, if you expect that somehow,
You'll get it all right. Yes,
yeah,
but you can,
diminish it and it becomes weaker and
but you can also quit beating yourself up
right,
for not getting it right,
right.
because that's practicing a mind you want to abandon entirely.
Yeah, I don't really do that much anymore. But I used to do it all the time.
Okay, so let go of that.
It's pretty much weak now.
You're pretty much
It's
what?
pretty weak now.
Yeah, well, that's great. So you rejoice in that.
Yeah.
Because it is not an effective strategy. It's literally practicing the minds we want to abandon. So if we're impatient with ourselves, if we're frustrated with ourselves, whatever, that's a mind we want to abandon. So we don't want to practice it on ourselves, because then we're pretty much likely going to be doing it to others. It's almost like, this is that habit part. If you get angry at someone or you get really impatient, it's very easy 5 minutes later to get impatient with the next person. It's like you're on a roll. You just keep doing it. And then you're just getting better at it. And it becomes more habitual. And then, you can wake up one morning and just cranky the whole day. So this is, the same is true of good qualities. But this grasping that getting what I want is part of the foundation of happiness keeps getting in the way of going, I'd much rather help you than take care of what, is on my to-do list. Because we think that that's where happiness is. Helping you is great if it's convenient. Because, we like helping others. We don't really get the fact that we like helping others is a clue to where happiness is. And unfortunately, one of the unfortunate things I think about translation is this, emptiness, voidness. I don't know. The ways in which this absence of inherent existence is translated, sort of the shorthand is emptiness or voidness. What does that mean? It means it doesn't exist in an inherent way. What does that mean? It's a dependent arising. No. It's not that it isn't. We have to get that. It's not that it doesn't exist at all. It doesn't exist inherently. And the things of samsara exist through our karma and affliction. So they are contaminated objects, just like our aggregates are contaminated. This body's the nature of suffering. Light bodies aren't. You know, when you're a Buddha, Arya being liberated, you won't have a body that's the nature of suffering. So you try to imagine that. I mean, really, it's like when you have one of those quiet moments and you're just like, oh, this is, nothing's bothering you. And you try to imagine what that would be like to have nothing bother you ever again.
Well, for me, my personal motivation was going through a health journey of a lot of suffering physically and learning how to train my mind so that I'm not affected by it at all. I'm happy no matter what state.
That's equanimity. Yep.
And I've made, I don't know, a lot of progress. And so now if like something happens, I'm like, barely affects me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's because you've been working with your
I've
mind.
worked on it.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. So you want to rejoice about that, and then you want to use that as extra motivation to finish the process.
It's very easy to slip when there's nothing happening. That's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that it's just this, it's understanding that the whole reason we have bodies that suffer at all is because we misunderstand how we exist. So you want to use that, you have this perfect example, your own body, to work on your understanding of how things exist. Because we really grasp after our bodies as being somewhat permanent. When you work with things like equanimity, that even pain, you said, well, okay, well, that's what it is. Right this moment, there's pain. Does the pain last forever? No, it changes. All you have to do is sit in meditation and just follow your pain. And you go, huh. And then it's not. It's some other body. It's just like, oh, my tooth really hurts. Oh, I have a headache. Oh, I'm not, it's cold, hot. Oh, it's just, I mean, it's like even intense pain changes. The sensation of it changes. And if we don't just dwell in it's not fair that I'm in pain at all, or dwell in I cannot handle it, or dwell in whatever. I mean, whatever. If we just it's like we're holding on to the pain, like it's something that is inherently existent. It's like Bob, what you were saying. It's amazing about how, if you think that you'll ever get it just right, yeah, until you're pretty high level bodhisattva or liberated, you're not going to get it right. And even a liberated being cannot help all sentient beings without error. You have to become fully enlightened. You have to be omniscient. You're pretty far along when you're liberated. You no longer have obstacles of body or mind, for that matter.
A big shift in my suffering was when I realized that the results not showing up. Every time I felt suffering, it was just a signal to go look at what happened and learn from it so that I don't go back there again. And it really, really diminished a significant amount of that feeling of suffering because I saw every lesson as a blessing.
Or teaching.
As a teaching.
Yeah, that's right. And this is the thing, like, because we're in samsara and these bodies are the nature of suffering, there's a point at which there's nothing more to learn about that. You can't fix it. You can't make it better. It's going to fall apart and you're gonna die. It may not be painful. Yay. That's a writing of good karma. So, yay. But whether it's painful or not, if you're peaceful, no matter what it is, that's the name of the game. Because a peaceful mind is a condition for a good state of mind to be present, and that helps you at the time of death. It's in terms of what type of seed ripens, so that helps you get that a good rebirth, especially if you're thinking about others. Either you're thinking about, oh, I'm looking forward to how I'll be able to help others in my next life, or if you're helping others by easing the transition for them that they're losing you, just depending on what your opportunities are. Or like some people who work till the day they drop dead. I saw an article about a woman who was a doctor. I forgot what country she was in. But she was still practicing, at 97 or something, she just worked till she died. So it's just but so really being able to work with your mind with equanimity, like it doesn't matter whether you like what's arising, in your whatever, your body or your world, or you don't like it. It's just what is. Our resistance to what is a big part of our own manufactured suffering in the moment. We just create additional suffering, the way we respond to what's happening. So so if you work with pain, but you haven't worked with your mind, in terms of people or something beyond your body, the suffering of others, you could say, then you have a new opportunity to work with that. You work with difficult people, you work with, the attachment to people. Yeah.
I have someone in my life who's very difficult, and I don't know. It's like a family member. Is it? I see it as a practice for me, but some people are like, I don't know if in Buddhism it teaches you to. I know that there is discussion about like walking away from things that will disturb you or like aggravate you. How does that differ than?
You have to have some inner wisdom about it. So like someone who's quitting drinking, has to realize, that in order to help themselves, that at least for a period of time, they cannot hang out with their drinking buddies. They don't have to be mad at their drinking buddies. They don't have to hate them, or judge them or anything. But that's a condition that they probably can't handle yet. Okay. Some people, years into recovery, they have no trouble with, going to bars with their friends, and they just don't drink, So, but you have to be very, you have really got to be habituated to a different habit. You have to know, like, and it's hard because you have to decide, is this difficult person someone I just don't want in my life ever again? And will it, and how will it affect my other family members and da 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 da? How serious is this difficulty? You created the cause to experience this. So you want, so ideally you want to be able to work with it so that you, in this karmic chain, the next time you run into this person in some future body and see in the future life, you don't have this difficulty, but you have to see where you are. Like, so you may have to, limit your time. You may have to watch what you talk about, so that it, just to try to minimize what, gets stirred. And then you have to work on it. It's like I've told you, I kept going home for family holidays, hoping to find my perfect parents, right? Oh, maybe this time they'll act right. No. And so it was always like, eh. And finally I made the decision, okay, I'm not going to have that expectation. I'm going to go because I want my family in my life. So if I want them in my life, I just have to accept where they are. And I don't notice where they are because I'm always going, you should be this way. Once I made that change and I'd go home just because I want them in my life, everything changed. They didn't change it, you know. It's just that my suffering from the fact that they weren't perfect parents wasn't there. No, it's not like it was perfect. You know, that I mean, there were moments where it's like, yeah, okay, here we go. But overall, I really am so grateful that I kept my family in my life. And this is so, but you have to know, you know, like you have to try, you know, and then kind of go, okay, that's not working. But you really have to remove your expectations out of it, of others. You know, you can work hard on your side, but any kind of expectation of others changing, you know, is not realistic. Yeah.
I had, I mean, I had different relationships with each of my parents, and I had a lot of anger and frustration and embarrassment and different things like that. And what helped me was my father had already passed away, but I wrote a letter to him apologizing to him because he couldn't, you know, he wasn't this to me, he wasn't that to me, this, that. And I did the same thing for my mom, who was still alive, and it totally transformed
Yeah.
my feelings about him and my feelings about my mother and my ability to like be a caretaker to her and it's like a switch
Well, you've
turn.
turned your perspective.
Right. And I didn't have that anger and sadness and frustration about the relationship, you know, what it was or what it was lacking. And it just was, but because it's all,
Oh, yeah.
so it was like, I couldn't believe that it had, and I don't even, and I think it was just something that it's like, nobody told me to do this, but, you know, like I just,
Your own inner wisdom.
it came up, so why don't I just write, because I'm not a big journaler.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let me just really just kind of think about this. And I remembered, you know, you can always write down, even though the person's not there. And sometimes that does something, and it just kind of like shifted everything. And it was just so helpful.
A
And so
diff-
it gives you the option, it gives you the ability to be with someone that might be difficult and just not let bother you. Because you kind of come to terms with it in your mind.
Well, it's also not them. This is the hardest thing
Right,
to
it's
keep.
your like
It's
reaction.
your response.
Right, to whatever they do, or just
Yeah.
being what just being who they are, it's your reaction.
You don't like it.
Right, it's like, right, it's how you say like.
And that's a karmic seed ripening.
Right.
You know, this is the thing. If you have difficult people in your life, guess what that means? You've been difficult in past lives. That's all it means. Does that make you somehow, you know, like hopeless? No. Does it make the other person hopeless? No. It just means that you created the cause. And of course, we all have. Nobody gets through life without people that rub them the wrong way. What was it, a teacher that made his attendant when he
Yes.
yeah. So he chose the person he most didn't get along with as his attendant.
As a lesson.
As a way for him to, not as a, just
No, Debbie, to
a
learn,
condition to work with his own mind. I'm a teacher, brought the teachings to Tibet. So, you know, so he's already well along the path, you know, but it's just like, it just shows you that we look at difficult people as someone to get rid of. Teachers go, wow, come closer, you know?
Is it just a given that if you incarnated into a really, 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 really difficult situation, that's
You created the cause for it.
that you created the cause of it?
Yep. And karma says, in the teachings on karma, cause and effect are, you cannot experience anything that you didn't create the cause for.
Then you also create the cause for when you figure out
Yeah.
you're going to change.
Yeah. And that's how you develop that habit. And then you're creating a future without that kind of suffering.
Right.
Yep. But you have to do that. You have to go, this is my habit, it's not their problem. It is my problem with them. And that I have control over. Just like pain, just being able
But
to.
as a child, you don't have control, unfortunately.
No, but you created the cost to be born there anyway. That's just the deal. So our childhoods are that opportunity for us later in life to, and some kids get it as children. They clearly have been working on their mind, and they use the opportunities going up, right away. It's just like you can see it with kids who have just tremendous compassion for their parents who are struggling with this or that, who don't blame them for not being able to, like I've, kids of addicts that, that you just think they don't stand a chance at all, to develop into a, wonderful human being, but they do. And it's because they're bringing habits with them, not because, so they may have been created the cause. They may have made promises that they want to be born in that kind of family so that they can caretake. That they've been working on that. So this is the thing. They could be bodhisattvas also, so. But that change of perspective is what's so helpful. Like you used it with using equanimity, where you just change your perspective on, okay, so there's pain. That does not have to ruin my life. It just is. One of the things with pain that's so nice is that if you have a chronic illness, then you can know that pain is an alarm system, right? It's telling us danger, danger. Well, when you know that, okay, I've gotten the message, but you can't do anything about it, you don't have to be alarmed. You just know, yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah.
My dentist gave me some narcotics, but I don't take them because I'd rather not hurt myself.
Yeah.
If I feel it, I won't hurt myself more.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
Take a little Tylenol or Advil or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really true. And those are ways in which we can work with, if you can learn to tolerate small pains, and not take the Tylenol, not take the Advil, and just, this will pass, and you don't get all bent out of shape. That will help you deal with larger pains. But if you haven't worked with the small pains and you just happen to have the large pains, then you might as well work with that because it's so much easier if you work with it. And the pain, it's yes, this is the suffering of samsara. It's not that pain is somehow all in your head. We've created the cause for it through our ignorance and our bad actions and all this kind of stuff, and we are reaping the results, and it hurts. When we realize that things don't exist the way we hold them to exist, we won't have suffering. We won't be creating, because none of our negative actions will arise. They will cease. So really reflecting and having a change of perspective is one of the best ways to kind of approach it. You kind of look, okay, who is this I care for so much? Who is this I try to protect the body of? Who is this I that I keep wanting to, make my heart not get hurt? All these different ways. Who is that I? Is it the same I as yesterday's? We hold it as if it's actually exactly the same I as yesterday.
Is that what creates the conflict of what you said before about, helping somebody like versus my to-do list, like that?
Yes, it's called self-interest. Because we think taking care of self-interest leads to happiness. And the Buddha said, wrong. You have to have self-care. We need to take care of this body because we need it. But taking care of this body at the expense of being able to help others, we have to balance that.
if you end up overriding it, like wanting to cherish somebody, and then it you know, oh, I need this time now to, I have to set up a couple of doctor's appointments and this and that, and like there's no time or something. It seems sometimes to,
Well, you have to also have wisdom.
yeah.
Cherishing others does not mean that you don't take care of what you have to take care of, what your responsibilities are. Like cherishing your partner does not mean abandoning your children, for example. So, these are things that we just need to work with in terms of, this is our problem. It's this all or nothing thinking, isn't it? It's like, oh, if I cherish them, what about me? Panic ensues. This is a problem, because actually taking care of ourselves involves cherishing others. They're not separate things. Cherishing someone else doesn't mean giving them everything they want. That's not wisdom. Cherishing others means you give them, we always put ourselves first. And we want to learn to develop the habit of putting others first. That's not at the expense of ourselves either. We don't want to do, we have to take care of ourselves, but we have to recognize how much we take care of ourselves. How much we cater to our moods, how much we cater to, I'm too tired, how much we cater to, I don't really like that, so I shouldn't have to do that. We just have to figure this out. And we have that capacity. We see it all the time. We see it in ourselves if we look, but we see it with others when they, how many children's movies do parents want to watch?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, but you do. It's this, we have this ability to say, this person needs this, and I can provide that for them. I don't have to like it in terms of, it doesn't have to interest you. It's like couples who go to couples therapy and the therapist says, okay, that means you alternate who chooses the movie. You set the thermostat in the middle between what you two prefer, because that, because there's no perfect anything. But being able to, when people say that they went to this or that because their partner wanted them to, and well, no, they didn't. If you say, yes, I'll go with you, that means you go with them and you're happy that they're happy and you're happy that they're enjoying it. You don't sit there going, what a waste of my time. I did this for you. It's a lie. You're lying.
Yeah, if it's like an accounting system.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's both people keeping their own self-interest, then it's not really.
It's not anything.
Yeah.
We kid ourselves about what we not all the time, fortunately. We wouldn't have any couples at all. It's just this, and we wouldn't raise children at all. We'd be so selfish. But it's this recognition that instinct to go, what's in it for me, and what's in it for me better be something I like, are mistaken. That getting what you like is not the secret to happiness. And we see that with people who, have more money than anybody could spend, and yet they still have cravings. They still have to have more of this, more of that. Oh, this earth's not any good. Let's go someplace else. Let's spend billions of dollars to go someplace else. Yeah, it pollutes the planet, but we're going to go find someplace else. Like he's going to live forever. It's just ridiculous. But that comes from that I'm never satisfied. And it's just chasing suffering. It doesn't mean we have to be satisfied with something we can change. Like, we want, we should take care of the planet. We should make sure the schools are good for our kids. All that kind of stuff. But thinking that happiness is somehow out there, separate from us, something that we can buy, something that we can own, something that we can get from someone else, is just not true. It's an inner process. Other people can be conditions for good moods, but peace of mind comes from within. We have to be satisfied with what we choose to think, say, and do. And sometimes it's not popular. They say, in the monasteries, whatever, that a really good practicing monk or something looks crazy to everybody else, because he's not focused on what is the norm of what is, what's important and all that stuff. What's important to them is their practice.
Shanti Deva eats, sleeps, and defecates.
Yeah. He doesn't study. He doesn't know anything. And then he gave a teaching and just did the Bodhisattva's way of life. Right, the teaching.
So social norms, like part of that's wisdom, I guess.
Yep.
But part of that is also trying to fit in.
You have to look at why you're trying to fit in. That's really important. It's like, yes, it's important to have harmony, get along with others. It's nice to have friends. We all need friends. We're social animals, all that kind of stuff. But we have to be able to go, am I doing this for the sole reason of just fitting in with, blah, blah, blah? Or am I doing it because they enjoy doing it, and so I'm happy to participate in things that they enjoy? So it really is it depends on your motivation. But like doing it for your own reputation, doing it that's not strong enough. They will fail you in the end.
Yeah, sometimes I let people speak about things I disagree with, but I just don't say anything.
Yeah, well, they are entitled to their opinion. You don't have to, agree.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. It's like, if in fact, it's really important to be willing to listen. We don't have to agree on everything. We can have different perspectives. And it's nice when we can talk about them. And it's nice as other people are interested in them. That doesn't mean we have to agree. And the more skillful we get at that, being able to listen without agreeing, the more likelihood of us learning something new that we hadn't known before. Just wanting to hang out with people who think the same way is another way of self-grasping.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Feels threatening to hang around people who have like different opinions.
And so you want to look at that. What is threatening about it? Are they really going to, am I physically harmed by them directly? From these particular people. These are, because nobody goes away.
Especially like the hate speech stuff.
Yeah. So you certainly don't want to participate in hate speech. That'd be something you're trying to abandon. It doesn't mean that you have to tolerate hate speech directed towards you in the sense of not walking away. Of course you can walk away. Even run. Run is acceptable. But it's this the more we can listen to different points of view and actually have a conversation, the more likely it is that it doesn't have to escalate to hate speech. Now, that's not true when people are just using hate speech to protest or do something, but and it's very hard when it's hate speech or any kind of really aggressive kind of attitudes are being stirred, where it's encouraged, just, whatever. It's always been true of any kind of change in society where, there are certain people that, think that a really aggressive, angry stance is the stance to take, and it always causes difficulties, which is another clue that anger doesn't work. But people use it, and people can and they can abuse others with it. But also not speaking up can harm others. So, but you have to have wisdom, and it's always going to depend on the conditions. That's why we have to really feel comfortable that our actions of body, speech, and mind are congruent with our values. Otherwise, our disturbing habits will arise, and then, once, we're angry, wisdom can't be there at the same time.
Isn't that assuming that our values are correct?
But no matter what, if you are not congruent to your values with your actions of body, speech, and mind, you can't even find out. I mean, it's just sort of like, but that self-respect, it's hard to have self-respect if you're not respecting your point of view. If you're just saying, yeah, well, I'm going to do this anyway because I want to fit in. You definitely want to always reflect on your point of view. Say, is that even true? Does it make sense? Does it hold up in my, experience? Same with what you do with the teaching. You don't just take his word for it. You kind of explore. Some things you don't have to explore so much because you already believe it. You just kind of go, yeah, I don't want anybody to kill me. Thank you very much. But then when you think, but I'm going to kill this mosquito, because it's annoying me.
Yeah, for me, the animal discussion is hard to sit through. It's hard to sit through people talking about animals in a kind of like a negative way, like if they're just a commodity or something.
Yep.
And I have learned to just say nothing because there's no helping usually them. They just get triggered or whatever by it.
And you're trying to avoid being triggered yourself.
Yeah. Well, yes. I'm like, I don't know what I should be doing, like standing up for something or trying to fit in, or it's.
If you're trying to protect others, speaking up is good. But you have to, it depends. If the speaking up is taken as no more than just aggression, then that's not helping. But if you practice being able to listen to different points of view, truly listen with interest, it makes it easier to express your own point of view that's different. They're more willing to listen. You're creating the cause to be heard. If nobody listens to you, they say the cause for that is a lot of idle speech. It's like, oh, you're babbling again. All right. So, oh. And I think we also need to focus a lot on our good qualities, our good instincts, our, that, like it's a good instinct to not want to harm animals or treat them like you said, like commodities, that's a good instinct because it's about caring for others, that aren't the same as you. That's a really good quality. And so sometimes all you can do is rejoice that you have that attitude. You don't have compassion for people who don't. You don't have to say anything. It's just, oh, because you really want to strengthen that resolve in that mindset so that life after life, you've got it. And that's the danger of doing things just to fit in. It's one thing to do things so, because friends need variety and they don't like all the same things. And so sometimes you have to go along with what they want to do, instead of what you want to do, but it's different than just doing things that you feel like I really shouldn't be, which everybody's done. I mean, none of us are exempt from that, but it's just, it's good to be able to have that self-worth that can just say, I'm valuable even though I don't like to do those things. Yep.
So I had this vision when I was developing one of my businesses, and it entailed really getting to the top of the social chain from a business point of view in the community. When I got to the top, I looked around and decided to walk home and not say goodbye to anybody. I just, it was like, oh, so this is what it looks like up here. This ain't so terrific. I think I'll go home and find a better way to spend my life.
And this is why people who seek that, they're always seeking whatever level, the status or the money or the power or whatever, keep seeking because it's not the path to happiness. I mean, some people, know that. And so they have friends, they have it's like, it's a really, they manage to reach whatever heights of everything and they still have a life. They don't just have a job, but it takes a lot of not grasping some goal, that the goal's not the point. The journey's the point.
Yeah. And the big thing for me was I just didn't want to be around those people. I didn't want to be at those. That's just not the way I wanted to live, and those weren't the conversations I wanted to participate or any of it.
Yeah, I felt the same way in law school.
Yes, I was just gonna say, yeah.
I did not relate to anyone in my class. I was just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like these people they just think about money and themselves. I'm like, I'm not part of this.
Well, let's just not judge all of them because some of them become the social activists we need.
They try, but then most people in my law school ended up going to big law instead.
But that's their choice. I mean, there's nothing the matter with that.
No, it's not. It's just not.
But it's not the path to happiness.
Not where I want to be.
No, I mean,
It's good.
it's just so funny because I know lots of people who went to law school and then went, no, not gonna live this life. And then I have other friends who, that became lawyers and they, they like their life. But it's very interesting. Yeah.
My sister is an attorney, but she's a healthcare attorney, and she's more of a helping person who interprets policy and helps companies that want to, offer health plans and things like that. So she's not like one of those, a typical attorney that people think of as,
That's because we judge.
Right.
And most of,
There are
there's a vast variety of attorneys out there.
different types of attorneys.
Yep.
So I didn't think there was that kind, but there are. So
Yeah.
it's all kind.
Yeah. It's just, it's not just the Aaron.
Brockovich?
Yes. So, it's, I'm really grateful right at the moment for the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center, oh my goodness, I mean, I give money to the lawyers because we need them right now. So it's, so this is the thing. We want to live within yes, we need to take care of our needs. We need to, be able to have enough to eat. We need to have shelter. We need to, and hopefully we have the good karma writing that we have jobs that can support us in those things, But if we don't, it's like, doesn't mean you cannot be happy. There are people all over the world that are content and they don't have enough of the material stuff. So the mind of want is a mind of suffering.
Venerable Tendron. Can't somebody be a corporate lawyer earning a ton of money and still be practicing the Dharma?
Absolutely.
Okay. All
It
right.
has nothing to do with, I mean, karma has something to do with how much money you make and, all those things. People who make a lot of money were generous in previous lives.
Yeah, it reminds me also of like the actor Richard Gere, who's a very active public Buddhist, and he's a pretty
Yep.
big
He
celebrity.
sponsors a lot of teachings. Yeah. I mean, exactly right. And in fact, it's one of the things you want to have compassion for people who are very successful in this life, and there's nothing about that success that feeds their good qualities. It's because that's really sad, because they have clearly the capacity to be generous and be successful. All those things that requires a lot of ethics in previous lives, and they're throwing it away in this life. They're just using up their good karma. It's terrible. And we've all met people who just, you'll hear teachers sometimes say, I think they just recently came from the God realm. They can't quite deal with this, what? I can't get everything I want. So, but compassion's always a good response. Just within. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to say anything. We just, that thought of this person's suffering and they don't even know that they're creating it because they're not working with their minds at all. They really blame everything outside of them. And if it weren't for, I mean, this is the thing, we forget that philanthropists have supported almost every good works in the world. It's uh, because governments don't necessarily do it. So we also need people to be very successful until we get it in our minds straight, and we can become like Trekkies. They just everybody has what they need in the Star Trek universe, in the Federation. So, but it's like that story of the boss who decided to pay everybody $75,000 a year that worked for him because they did a study that found that seemed to be the level that people needed to earn in order to feel safe, and his employees who already made 75,000 were really angry. They didn't earn it. I worked hard to get to this, it's really sad. That's the disturbing state of mind. That it's that I have to have more than to prove my success. It's really heartbreaking. Those are people who are not likely to be happy. That really is heartbreaking. So So part of this understanding of how things exist goes to this point of thinking that things are inherently good or inherently bad, inherently desirable, inherently, undesirable. This is part of our misunderstanding how things exist, that things are actually changing all the time, that it all depends on your perspective, that on one day that you could not even be bothered by anything, that the next day you're bothered by it, all of it. It's just everything's coming from our perspective. And if we change our perspective, it's really possible to have a completely different experience. And so some of what cherishing others is about is really trying to look at it from others' perspectives. Mm. It's very hard because of our habits, to really understand this idea that you can be happy with nothing going right. That this idea that you have to have like a smooth day, an uneventful day to have a good day. It's just not true. That's when it's really helpful to think about people who do not have the good conditions that we have. And so sometimes, when I wake up and my body's screaming at me, and I think about people who have to go to work no matter how bad it is.
Yeah.
And every day they have to do it. Every day after day for decades and decades and decades. That most of what bears down on us is pretty lightweight stuff. And yet we can be so miserable. That's not using our good conditions very well. So. Okay. So is Keldon back to teaching on Tuesdays? Yeah.
Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, but in a week. So
But that's not confirmed. I don't know how
yeah,
he's
so
doing.
it's iffy. Okay. All right. And this Wednesday is the last Mind and Its Potential class.
Right.
Saturday is a practice day of meditation and reflection on mind. It's from 10 to 4. Bring your own lunch. And next Wednesday, right, you start how to meditate. And that's Lozar. So also, well, that's good. It's the first day of the Day of Miracles. Lozar is just in Tibetan New Year.
Losar?
No, can you talk about what she'll be?
How to meditate?
It's how to meditate.
What?
Yeah.
It's kind of self-explanatory.
Well, I wanted to confirm.
It's module 2 of discovering Buddhism.
Okay.
It's just the first one is the mind.
Yeah, so how to meditate is going through different types of meditation, like single-pointed versus analytical, the different kinds of ways to meditate, and all the little tips for how to tolerate it. So a lot of people don't start off liking it.
Yeah.
as we know. So, uh, and you'll get a taste of that, like on the practice day, where you're doing different meditations throughout the day. So, okie dokie. So rejoice that all your positive energy this evening, and that includes, like, I don't know about that. Just your investigation of these topics and willingness to spend a whole evening and multiple times, about, the ways in which to work within instead of trying to get the world to cooperate with you. So it's, that's good stuff. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way, that I may follow their perfect example. This top paragraph. Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. For the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and sons, along the lineage masters. All the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious one, may the smile of the incarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So we're starting to talk about the stages of the path that really, what would you call it? Diverge from other spiritual traditions, like all the stuff to, try to be sure you have a good rebirth, that you are abandoning negative actions and adopting positive actions. Those are shared by all the world's religions. It's the same sort of things are taught. When we start talking about how things exist, that's different, so just pointing that out. Doesn't mean you have to buy into it, but it's just, that's where, this is where it starts to diverge. However, I was talking to to some other nuns today, and we were talking about how, what is it about an enlightened mind? It pervades everything. Are they really, separate minds? Are enlightened minds all separate? Or is it really just one mind, that they've all become part of, just for enlightened mind? And apparently it's a very debated point. So, um, it's so fascinating. One of the most fascinating experiences I had was there was a period of time in Australia where I had, a geshe was teaching us on the subjects, and we had a geshe as a tutor. So we had two geshes teaching us, and they didn't always agree. It was really interesting to see the discomfort that you might feel. In a Western education, it was, I don't know about you, but you kind of get this idea that there's a right answer. And it was really interesting to just have to sit with the fact that the two geshes were coming down on a different point, and just being, okay, so how do I work with that? So it's kind of interesting.
Isn't that unusual? Isn't that unusual? Usually, like if one venerable is talking about another, they always say something positive, and they're always
Well,
very
it's both were taking them positive. They just had a different point of view on a a philosophical point.
Oh.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah, I never experienced that because everybody seems to have the same. I mean, they come at it from different ways, but they're saying the same.
You have to be pretty far advanced in scholarship to have debatable points. Because you really have to know what you're talking about come from all sorts of angles to be able to go,
It's like that.
Yes, that's what they do in debate, and so and most of the debates do have a really, because they're following some logic, and so they're narrowing things down in the debate that they're using in monasteries. They are narrowing everything down to one point. It's not like this and that. Each debate is on one point, and they get it narrower and narrower and narrower, and then that way they learn where the illogic exists in their thinking, and then they narrow it down to one point. But some things, of course, it's not like the Buddha answered all questions or something. It's like, so there are things that you just all the scholars from all the years, have different viewpoints. That's why they're different sects in Buddhism. I mean, it's just, it's just different. They're different final views. So it's just, but it is, I love the fact, Geshe Geluk, he's a teacher in North Carolina. He likes to say when you're debating, you want to face like a mountain and a heart like a marshmallow. Because the purpose of debate isn't, the only way you succeed at debate is if you bring someone else, your opponent, to right view. It has nothing to do if you can just out argue them, or something. It has to do with whether you can move them from a wrong view to a correct view. And so, you're doing it out of compassion. So it's pretty cool. And it gets out a lot of energy. It's fun to watch them in a debate courtyard because, it's very boisterous. And now they're, so the nuns are also learning debate. So they're finally awarded Geshe degrees. So yay. Anyway, alrighty. Have a good week, a meaningful week.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night.